In Module 5, we will explore the Norman Conquest, which is regarded to be a landmark in the history of the English language. Please read the materials and the videos posted here for more details. The Norman Conquest is marked by the end of Old English and the beginning of Middle English. The invasion and subsequent occupation of Britain by France changed the political, cultural, and linguistic identity of Britain forever. It also shows us how the language of the invaders is ranked as a higher language in the social hierarchy, whereas the language of the native people would have a subordinate status. When Anglo-Saxons invaded England in the 5th century, the Celtic languages, which were the original languages of the inhabitants, automatically became the subordinate language, whereas English occupied a higher status due to its military and political power. The same story repeated 500 years later. The French occupation created a three-level hierarchy. The uppermost class of people, who were the royals and courtiers, spoke the French language. The middle class, who were Anglo-Saxons, spoke English. And the lowest class, the peasants, spoke their Celtic languages. Despite this invasion, English language did not die out because the French invaders had no language policy to decimate the language of the native people. People spoke English and French both, and both languages thrived. English slowly gained access to the court and administration. In the company of the French language, English became a richer language because, without any prejudice, it not only borrowed French vocabulary and expressions but also simplified its grammar. Middle English later became so palatable that even the French royals and courtiers learned it and began speaking the language. Then English became the language of administration, military, commerce, and literature as early as by the 13th and 14th centuries. Middle English began to sound like a totally different language altogether in course of time due to the influence of the French language. We can see the clear differences between Old English in Beowulf and Middle English in Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. Canterbury Tales is certainly far closer to the English we speak today, whereas Beowulf would be beyond comprehension. You can try it for yourself. Three very important linguistic developments characterize Middle English. They are in grammar, in vocabulary, and in pronunciation. In grammar, English relied less on inflectional endings and more on word order to convey grammatical information. In other words, it became less synthetic and more analytic. Change was gradual, and all had different outcomes in different regional varieties of Middle English, but the ultimate effects were huge. The grammar of Middle English was radically different from that of Old English. Grammatical gender was lost early in Middle English, and the range of inflections, particularly in the noun, was reduced drastically, partly as a result of the reduction of vowels in unstressed final syllables, as was the number of distinct paradigms. Let's look at the nouns, verbs, and pronouns of Middle English. The plural forms of nouns generally end in s or es. However, some nouns end in n or en. Just like in modern English, ox becomes oxen. Especially in earlier texts, possessive forms end in s or es, and there is no apostrophe. And possessives are distinguished from plurals by context. Regarding verbs, the infinitive form, for example, to go, to sleep, to sing, ends in n or en, such as goon, slepen, singen. In later texts, the N may disappear. The N or EN ending can also indicate a plural form of the verb. For example, they goon, they sleepin, they singen. In the past tense, the ending may be N or EN or ED. The N or EN can also be a past participle. Like modern English eaten, the ending th or eth in modern spelling indicates the present tense. In can also indicate an imperative command addressed to more than one person. The past tense is generally indicated, as in modern English, with an ending containing t, d, or ed. Verbs of this type have similar past participle forms. The past tense's past participle may also be indicated by a range in the root vowel of the word, just like in modern English. Sing, sang, sung. Middle English possessed more verbs of this irregular type than modern English does. Now let's look at the pronouns of Middle English to understand how English evolved over time from the 5th century to the modern time. Here is a table that shows you Old English, Early Middle English, Late Middle English, and Early Modern English. Early Modern English is the time of Shakespeare, the 15th and 16th century. So we can look at the pronouns in Old English, which are so very different from Middle English. Even Early Middle English is quite similar to Old English, but as it transitions to the Late Middle English, it becomes very different. This is because of the French influence. We can see here the first thing on the row in this table, the evolution of first person singular pronoun I in Old English. In Old English, I is ik. In Early Middle English, it is it. When we come to Late Middle English and Early Modern English, we see that C and CH have fallen off, and we get the Modern English pronoun I. When we look at the pronouns in Old English and then compare them with Early Modern English, we will see the big change. So, thu in Old English changes to thou in Early Middle English. When we come to Late Middle English and Early Modern English, thou changes to thou. Interestingly, he, the masculine third person pronoun word, remains the same all through, from Old English to Modern English. Similarly, me also remains the same. However, we can see how her evolved from here in Old English. Another interesting point is how the pronoun it evolved from hit in Old English. Hit remained the same in Early Middle English and also until Late Middle English. We can see that language is dynamic, always evolving and changing due to cultural, technological, social, and many other factors. It never remains frozen in time. In vocabulary, English became much more enhanced, heterogeneous, and rich due to the borrowings from French, Latin, and Scandinavian languages. Large-scale adoptions of new words had significant contributions to the meanings and the stylistic registers of the words. I want you to study this table here to understand the evolutionary pattern of the different parts of the speech over time from Old English to Early Modern English. Thanks to Chaucer for his Canterbury Tales, which marks a most significant turning point in the history of the English language. With philosophical, mystic, and spiritual writings such as this, the English language reached a height of intellectual dimension that was never seen before. Read the chapter on the Norman Conquest and the features of Middle English in the textbook for a more comprehensive understanding on this topic. Also, read the excerpts from Chaucer's Canterbury Tales in the textbook to see what Middle English looks like and how it sounds.